Good evening. Welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Jim Stamm. Say hello, sir.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
And we've brought along one of my favorite fans, and I call him fan and nothing more because that's exactly what I love about him. He's literally just a Pirates fan that lives in Texas and somehow still watches this team. So, Shaun Conley, say hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
So, today, before I get into some big rambling rant, I thought we should spend a little bit of time talking about the GM maybe being part of the reason why they don't want to spend this year, as opposed to just going ahead and scapegoating Bob Nutting like we typically do. I think in this case, we may be actually up against one of those weird situations where, yeah, the owner's cheap, but the GM's not interested in spending right this moment. Does that make sense to you guys, or am I just making things up? Because I've already been told that I'm making an excuse for Nutting, and I really don't think I am this time.
Shaun, go ahead.
All right. I don't think you're nuts. But I also don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So Cherington is more of the expert, and really Nutting's more of a owner/customer type. So you want to go with the expert. If the expert is saying, don't spend, our expectations for 2022 aren't that high to begin with. We want to develop talent. We want to make sure that we get our at-bats. We want to make sure we get people to understand what they can do actually pitching. I don't see that as a bad thing to try and grow the homegrown talent.
See, I don't see it as a bad thing either, but my gut instinct tells me if I'm agreeing with Bob Nutting, I'm making a bad choice. And I feel like I'm agreeing with Bob Nutting here in that I'm okay with them not spending a lot of money this year if it's in an effort to protect prospects and they actually think some of them are going to grow into the job this year. But Jim, as you and I have talked about multiple times, we don't see an awful lot of them really growing into the job this year, right? So it seems to me like a little bit of money wouldn't be a bad thing, and I don't think it would hurt the rebuild. But I get the impression that's where Ben Cherington is from his comments.
It's tough because, like you opened with, is like anytime you even slightly step into the corner of Bob Nutting, that's a hot place to be, and people don't like it. I think if you're paying attention to what's been going on pretty earnestly the last couple years, you tend to understand it a little better. People that maybe aren't as tapped into what this process is and where they are in it might think, well, here we go again. This is just another guy that is a nutting defender and doesn't want to put blame where blame is due. But
Yeah.
no, I do think this time it is kind of legitimate, and it's probably another year away in that regard. I would put a year on it, even though we don't like timetables. But yeah, so I think that is something that the fans that are a little more plugged in understand.
Yeah, I mean, Shaun, from your perspective, you've been very patient with the rebuild, just from our chats back and forth. I think you probably tend to lean a little bit more towards the overly patient side. You're actually like, I'm good. Just do whatever you're doing. Don't mess it up, right? What's your fear there? Like, how could they screw this up at this stage if they were to spend some money? What would be a mistake?
I think just overspending. I think that once you open up the wallet and you start committing to guys for 3 and 4 years and they absolutely just crap out on year one and you can't move them, I think you're holding a spot for somebody who,
Yeah.
you have a lot of people in the farm system, and you want to have them move up here in the next couple of years, 3 years. And if you have somebody here who's slated for that, and they're making 7, 8, 9, 10 million a year, they're going to keep them like Polanco. That's my
So
big fear.
for you, it's primarily a length thing then.
I think
So
it's a length thing. And I also don't want to sit here in 2025 and be like, oh man, if we only got Cruz another 300 at bats in 2022 at the end, we'd be so much better. We'd be so much further ahead. I don't
that
think
makes
that's what you want
sense.
to say. You don't want to be in that position.
That makes sense on the surface. And I think, Jim, circling back to where we've, already taken this conversation multiple times, I don't see the Cruz issue on the mound. So to
Yeah.
me, I'm more than happy to go out and get a veteran for a year or two. Mostly, and I agree with you, Shaun. I don't want to go crazy and give people 4 or 5 years at this stage. But a 2 or 3 year deal on a starting pitcher, I might be okay with that because I think they need some stability there. Like, I would love a Tyler Anderson to come back in here for 2 or 3 years and shepherd this young staff through a little bit. Jim, I mean, are we still on the same page there with the pitching? I mean, are you feeling like length ruins it for you like it does for Shaun?
Well, I mean, I think when you look at who's going to be available, and obviously from the pitching side of things, you can cross some certain names off the list. It's just not going to happen. Be it length of any type of deal or whatever. These guys the Pirates aren't going to spend that kind of money, and we're looking for some bargains, right? If you're going to do anything in that 1, 2, 3 year range.
Well, the very top end of the free agent market are players that, quite frankly, a team like the Pirates couldn't afford if they wanted to.
Yeah, and
Like
nor would it be wise right now to do it.
we don't even know if Zach Greinke's going to return. But let's say Zach Greinke returns, right? He's going to want $25 million a year, right?
Yeah.
For a couple years at his age. I don't know that I could do that. I don't know that I'd want to do that.
No.
But I'm sure somebody will, because for every team that can afford to flush $40 million down the toilet for 6 starts from, a right-hander who was never as good as he was in his own head anyway, there's 5 teams like the Pirates that couldn't do that, right?
I don't know if I want to step inside Zach Greinke's head for even a couple minutes anyway, but yeah, so he's an interesting guy.
But then you got Verlander, who didn't even pitch this year.
Yeah.
Or really last year.
Right. Then you got Kershaw, who, ow my back every 3 weeks. Like, you don't want any of those guys, right? So, like, your first tier guys really are you're starting to get into your Kevin Gausman, who's going to be over $20 million and really kind of had a breakout year this year. It's not like he's been a stud his entire career. There's just as much chance that this was just a good year. I don't know how you go out and give length to any of those guys. So, I mean, yeah, especially the Pirates. You can't swing and miss there, like you said, Shaun.
Mm-hmm.
So if they swing and miss, they set this organization backward. That's not something they can afford to have. It's a conundrum.
Yeah,
it really is.
And that's always the problem with teams that are in the Pirates position is if you're in a little bit better market and have the budget that some of these teams do, if you swing and miss, so be it.
Right.
Yeah, it sucks and whatnot, but you can overcome it. Pirates just really need to be careful. I think, when we were discussing this topic before the show, I looked up something, and I hate to parse words too carefully and look at them too closely, but Cherington said, and I'm going to quote, and this was just recently, we'll have things we can do this offseason as it relates to acquiring players through free agency or trade. We have a rough idea where we sit now and what that means in terms of the room we have to work in. So I thought that last part was interesting. I'd like to get both of your takes on that, because I have my thoughts. That last part that says we have a rough idea where we sit now and what that means in terms of the room we have to work in. So,
I'll tell you what, though, this is going to bleed perfectly into the next topic I want to bring up. So let's make people wait until after the break for our answers to this,
all right.
because I agree with you, and I want to give Shaun a minute to process, because I want his answer to be as good as his face says it's going to be. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break. All right, and we're back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. And we left you off with Jim bringing up a very interesting quote from Ben Cherington, where he basically says we have an idea of what we're going to spend, or where we're at and where we are in relation to what the room we have to work with, right? So, Shaun, do you want to take a crack first, or would you like me to go after it? I mean, all I know right now is that we promised an audience we were going to react to it, and we've had about 10 minutes to think about it.
First of all, Shaun, me and Gary like to do this. We like to spring things on each other just to get that natural reaction. So you didn't just get ambushed. This is how we roll.
Hey,
you got Jim bushed.
Yeah, you got Jim bushed.
Fair enough. It's all part of the game, right? So, no, I think that as far as the room that they have to operate in, they are constrained. They're constrained by the small market. They're constrained by the excuses that they have given themselves in the past. Like, we're a small market. We can only do so much. We can't go out there and get that big free agent like Verlander. I would disagree that Greinke is going to be a big free agent. I got to watch him actually twice this year, which is pretty lucky. And he topped out at exactly 89 miles an hour both times. So that's
what he does, though.
It's a lot of fun to watch. But
yeah,
he's not that power guy anymore.
He's a pitcher, not a thrower.
Exactly. Yeah. But as far as Ben goes, as far as Cherington goes, and what they are looking at, and what they're constrained by. I just hope they're not looking at what they can't do. I hope they're looking at what they can do. And going out there and doing
that's a good way to put it.
It's very good.
And going out there and getting some bargain bin pitching, just like you said. I think that as far as free agents go, in my head, I separate it out between position players and pitchers. So, and as far as the way that you guys have talked about the prospects coming up, pitchers are a lot farther away than the position players. You don't want to block the position players. There's nobody that's going to be there for the next couple of years that's going to block the pitchers. So
yeah, I agree with you there. I think when I think about Cherington's statement, what I'm really thinking about mostly is at this point we're piling up statements that all prepare the fan base for being underwhelmed, right? That's what I keep hearing. I keep hearing an awful lot of, we could do this and that, but, kind of just expect most of it to be internal, right? Or, we got room, but, we got to be real careful with it. I kind of wish they'd do something like we just did in the first segment, where they come out and they say, like, no, we got these prospects that are coming up that are close enough that we really want them to be able to have a place to step into. We want to leave a landing strip open for them. I'd much rather tell Cole Tucker to go packing than, tell Javi Baez to go packing, right? You want your prospects to have a landing spot. That's the purpose of this whole thing. I go back to just thinking they don't have enough on the mound to do that, despite a lot of people thinking Rowanzi's going to come up here and start in the All-Star game. I don't see it. I think they probably need a little bit more seasoning on guys like him.
So So Gary, what do you think he means then by that in terms of the room we have to work in? Because I take that in a very um, simple way, which is they do still have some sort of a budget they want to stick to this off season. And maybe that's me just looking at it too critically, but it was an interesting ending to it, I thought.
Well, do you ever go out on a double date? Either of you? Do you ever go out on a double date with your wife? You're sitting there, and the couple across from you, they order like this nice bottle of wine, and your wife looks at you like, "Can we get a bottle of wine like that?" And you go, "All right, yeah, we'll get a bottle of wine. That's sweet, yeah." And she looks at you with the price, and she kind of gives you that look like, "We all right?" You're not going to go, "Yes, we have $110 extra we can spend this week, dear," right in front of the couple. You're going to go, "We're all right, yeah." And then you get in the car and you're going to go, "No gas next week." It's not something that I think he's ever going to say out loud, is the point. He'd have to tell you the budget if he told you directly he had one, right? So
But
it at least, if not, there'd be a question about it.
right, but to me, I guess the news would be, I looked at it like this year with the money that they have committed to payroll and next year that um, that wouldn't even really come into play. Obviously, we know they're not going to go bonkers anyway. They know that. So I guess
Yeah.
it just surprised me a little bit that it suggested that there is, despite that, still a framework in place before you even know who or what might become available. So it was just a little something caught my attention.
It's not a bad thought because how many times did they personally bring up that they had some kind of an agreement that they'd be able to have the money later, and a lot of people have speculated about what that could possibly mean. Does that mean that they're setting the money they don't spend now aside so that they can add to payroll way above what this market could typically handle for a few years to open a window? Part of me thinks like, okay, that's kind of counterintuitive to what you're doing with the prospects then, because inherently your team's going to be super cheap for a few years. Um, but I don't believe it either. I mean,
Yeah,
I just don't believe that Bob Nutting's got some Ben Cherington escrow
he's got a little.
opened up.
He's got a Dave Ramsey envelope off to the side, and if you if you
Yeah.
don't know if you don't get that reference, it's perfect. But I don't think it's working that way. So yeah, and I don't want to sit here and put every quote under a microscope, but it does
Well,
seem
he better get to work giving us a lot more then, because when you get two
uh,
quotes from the guy in a month,
that's
heading into an off season following 101 losses, you're going to parse.
that's just it. Yeah, we get it and we just stare at it because, like you said, you're not getting fed very much. So
Exactly. Not that there's anything to say right now. I mean, we got people out there pretending that there's this ongoing contract negotiation for Yoshi in the background. Like, it's just silly things are gonna just pique people's interest over time here. But I figured a good subject for us to touch on here while we're talking about signings and money is, I mean, is the era of the big money starting pitcher dying? And what has killed it? I'm going to read you a quote from Buster Only. I'm pretty sure most of you know him, but he's a reporter for ESPN. Been doing it a really, really long time. Um, and you also know the challenges I have with national baseball writers for the most part. So take this as it is. There's a desperate need, which is just an insane word here, but there's a desperate need for the MLB, which I hate too, the
the
MLB. Just call it MLB. The Players Association, to talk about the pitching changes and restoring the preeminence of the starting pitcher. It'd be better for the product, it'd be better for the union, given the importance of starters and setting market prices. So I had a few issues with this, and it really got me thinking mostly about a conspiracy theory that I've kind of held in the back of my head for quite some time, right? So I'm going to go ahead and approach it, and we'll see what you guys think of my nuttiness this time. First, Buster has no idea what the major problems are with baseball if he truly thinks this is something that's up there, or he thinks that people can just complain that the role of something in sports has changed and they can get it reversed. That would be like saying that hockey goons could complain to the union and have it reinstituted as something that happens every game in the NHL. So, silly on its face. Here's my conspiracy theory. The game itself, in the name of health, has changed the role of starting pitching to the point where it is setting up a structure of minimizing salaries long term. I think Garrett Cole might be the last big money free agent starter for quite some time. Thoughts? I'll go with you, Jim, because Shaun went first last time.
It's funny. I've never heard you say that before. And it kind of goes a little bit along with some of the things I've been thinking too, which is, and maybe it was by accident at first. They started figuring out that, look, we're going to give guys less times through batting orders, and then it just by accident kind of started happening, right? Where it just started diminishing the role. It would kind of be like in the NFL with the running back situation, where I don't think anyone set out to destroy the market value of running backs, but the game changed. They figured out other ways to do things. You can get by with guys that can get 1, 2, 3 innings. It's hard to find these Garrett Coles, right? So if you can find another way to, skin a cat, I mean, why wouldn't you do it? And so, it's great for the owners, and it's great for GMs trying to go out and find guys to pitch and effectively get through things. I want to say this because I don't want it to get lost in the conversation, but I looked over in the last 10 years how much this has dramatically changed. And in 2011, the percentage of 6 plus inning games from starters was at 65.7%.
Wow. And I just wrote a piece on this.
Yeah, it is now down to 36.6%.
I just wrote a piece on this year, and the top in the league was the Oakland Athletics, averaging 5.1 innings.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, so it has, that is 10 years.
That's a trend. That's not a fluke.
Boy, that's going off a cliff with it. And it was 31.8% last year, but, COVID had something to do with that. So, look, I don't even know if they can stop it. Forget about whether it's desperate or whatever. I don't like it. I don't like it.
I don't either.
Because it kills the game in the sense of the rhythm of it and whatnot. But I understand from a baseball perspective why you're doing it. Shaun, what do you think?
I think a lot of what you said is absolutely 100% correct. But I also think that we're on the back end of a lot of these big name pitchers. And it seems like this is a lot of the elite quarterback debate in the NFL, whenever you're really just trying to parcel out which 5 are the best quarterbacks, like which 5 are the best starting pitchers in the MLB, and what's that worth? And just to counter your guys' argument where you're not getting as many innings, well, playoff baseball has also changed. Like if you can sit out there and send out your big horse for that wild card game, that game number 1, you can get 5 or 6 innings. What's that worth?
Yeah, it'd be nice to see, because this year I didn't see that, Shaun. This year I saw an opener, and then somebody that used to be a starter, and then a middle reliever, and then a specialist, and then a closer in the 7th. And I want to win every inning. I don't want to win this game.
I don't know.
That's what I saw almost right away.
I saw something a little bit different. I watched that Dodger game, and Max Scherzer was getting pulled out in the fifth, I think, and he did not want to come out. He gave them five really good innings, four and a third, whatever it was, and that manager came out to get the ball, and Max Scherzer shook his hands. I think
Yeah,
that whenever,
Max Scherzer's earned that too.
yeah,
There might be
yeah,
about five guys that have earned that. I
but that's
think
what we're
my
talking
bigger
about.
question is, I think my bigger question is, will we be allowing anybody else to earn that? The way that I'm seeing baseball trend right
Yeah,
now,
can they even build it up to get to that
I don't
point?
see them letting anybody do it anymore.
Okay,
That's something that I think baseball is kind of shifting on a little bit, and I'd love to think that it's just health and trying to protect arms and not really sure, how to do it. And here's this analytics that say you should really only face a lineup twice, and let's just keep adding things to it, right? And then before you know it, you've got all pitchers kind of like on the same level. Yeah, they're better. Some of them are better. But if you're only going to go 4 or 5 innings here as a top, you're not going to get $300 million in 10 years. Not now. Eventually, inflation will take them to that point. But I think it's going to take contracts down a little bit. And backing this to the Pirates, is it possible that this kind of makes Ben Cherington's plan a little bit more doable? If you're not necessarily looking for five guys that can give you 6 or 7 innings every night, and instead you're just looking at building a pitching staff with, 11 to 12 really, really good talents that can give you a decent chunk of innings, does that make the job a little easier?
Well, I think you look back at what year was that the Royals kind of really perfected that year. Was that in 2015, 2016 when, they really perfected that 4 to 5 innings at the
Mm-hmm.
max. They turned it over to just a dominant bullpen. And so,
And
yeah,
the Rays came close
and
last
the
year.
Rays came close. So I think you are looking at certain teams specifically that it can help and has helped. So, and again, it just comes down to, it's kind of funny what has happened to baseball is, like I said, teams have figured out other ways to get by and maybe even get by just a tiny bit little better statistically on it. It's kind of like all these teams have decided, look, the analytics show you don't need five tool guys anymore. If you can, go out and hit 46 home runs and hit 203 and do such and such a thing, you can kind of make up for some of that with the same productivity at the end of the day. So,
They're still real nice to have, though.
they really are, but they're so few and far between that I think teams have just figured, oh, well, we can go out and get a guy that can do this. It's very hard to find a guy that can go do all the Acuna things.
I agree with that, but when Acuna comes along, he's going to come in and be able to be the very best that Acuna can be from the beginning.
Sure.
If Nolan Ryan steps in, because Shaun, you're sitting down there in Texas, and it's like headquarters for starting pitching over the years, right? I mean,
you might as well just say God walks into the room.
well, but
Nolan
if a
Ryan
guy
walks in.
comes along, like that, who's got the tools and has the juice, and he can go and give you those kind of innings, he's got an arm made out of rubber. You know those guys. Are they ever going to get to the point where they let them? Like, we're letting like Adam Wainwright go 8 innings in a playoff game, but Adam Wainwright's Methuselah. He's done this for 20 some years. He's earned his respect. His managers know what he can do. I mean, hell, maybe that's why Schultz got fired, really. Who knows? But regardless, are they going to allow pitchers to develop like that, or do you think that we're going to be artificially holding them back as we move forward as a game?
I think you're going to see more of this, and I think there'll be a few guys here and there that I don't want to call them transcendent, guys that are coming along that we haven't even heard of yet. But there'll be some guys. There'll be a few that, they're just so good, so dominant. It's going to be hard to take a guy like that. If you get to that point. So I think you're still going to see it. It's just going to be less and less. And then you're going to start looking for more guys that can give you those, like you said, those 2 to 3 innings and get them out of there before they have to face the lineup, a second and third time.
Yeah. Shaun, what do you think about that?
I think that baseball goes in cycles, and right now this is part of that cycle. I think that it'll kick back just because you talked about the Royals in Tampa Bay. They're able to find a way to do it. Now everybody's trying to do that. Everybody's lessening the workload and putting more of a burden on more of their pitching staff. And 162 games is a long season. If you have a guy who can put in 200 innings, that is very valuable. Even 180 innings, that takes a lot of burden off of the rest of the pitching staff. There's a lot of value in that.
So I think it's fair to say that it's here to stay for a little while because it has worked reasonably well for a lot of teams. It's saving a lot of people money, and I think what's lost on a lot of fans is just because the Dodgers are spending $275 million this year doesn't mean they want to be. I don't think that's necessarily what they'd like to do. The Red Sox have a market where they could afford a salary up there if they really, really wanted to. And they made a decision years and years ago that they could do this a heck of a lot cheaper. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, all these owners have a little bit of Bob Nutting in them. They're baseball owners, right? Historically, they have always been, how should I put this, less than trustworthy and giving of their money. So I think to answer your question, to bring it back, Gary, to just with the Pirates, you said it's here to stay for a little bit. And so, Shaun, even if it does end up cycling out at some point, and who knows, look at the last 10 years we just looked at. But to answer your point, Gary, is I do think it kind of lines up with the Pirates right now. The next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I don't think you're going to see a trend away from it that soon, if at all. So, yeah, hey, look, the Pirates need a little bit of a break here or there. If that's where some of it is, or one aspect of it, great.
Worse things have happened, right, than having something break the Pirates' way. I'll tell you what, though, guys, let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to start talking about a little bit of a series we're going to start here on the show. We're going to start talking about potential rule changes in the CBA that could make some things cool for the league, and maybe some of them will be wishful thinking. We'll see. All right, and welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. I really feel like Jim and I were derelict in duty. We didn't come up with any kind of a theme song to intro this new segment that we're going to introduce here. But with the CBA coming up, I really thought it would probably be smart for us to spend at least a segment on just about every show talking about something that could change in the CBA realistically, and talk a little bit about what it could do for the Pirates. And I don't want it to be a CBA speech every week. So, if you don't know what the CBA is, collective bargaining agreement, hopefully you retain things well, and we don't have to repeat that over and over again. And I'd really like the salary cap to not be the subject every single week, because I think if we're going to get victories, realistically, some of them are going to be pretty small. So for this week, I thought we'd talk about what if MLB instituted the ability for teams to trade draft picks. Right now, they're only allowed to trade comp picks, which we've seen some teams do, and that's kind of cool. If teams were able to trade draft picks, do you think it would change the ability of small market teams like the Pirates or the Orioles even to amass some first round picks and be able to get to the top of the mountain a little bit more reasonable amount of time? Shaun, I'll start with you for this because you've got another team in your backyard that stinks out loud too, the Rangers. So
No, fair enough. Uh, I would say I'd be more concerned about the bottom of the draft, kind of like the rounds 20 through 40. I could see just some teams like the Padres, just to take an example, just say, I want this player. I want to trade away picks 25 through 40 this year. Take them, and you're going with it. Um, so, what do you do with all those players once you actually draft them? And what's the money situation going to be? What's the slot money? How is that going to go back and forth? Because I think that's the biggest factor. So, like, let's say you do trade a number one pick to somebody. Is it going to be? Are you going to get that slot money too? Is it going to be half? Is it going to be a quarter?
that's a great point.
So, I think that's the biggest question with trading the draft picks.
Yeah, I think they'd almost have to have the slot money travel. You're right. And there'd have to be some kind of a limit on how many you could amass too. Like with the international pool money, Jim, they limit how much you're allowed to actually amass from any one team.
Right.
So, in other words, you wouldn't be allowed to take 20 draft picks. Not that I think we're going to go back to 40 rounds of drafts ever again with the reduced MILB system, but I do think we could get back to 25, 30 at some point. And if that's the case, yeah, you wouldn't want a team with 37. That might be messy, right?
Right.
In fact, there aren't a lot of teams that would want 37. So do you think this would have any kind of an effect at all, or do you think people would just be too cautious with it, Jim?
You know what? I think it'd clearly have an effect. I think, again, it's nice to have some options for some teams that need other ways to kind of rebuild or get things up off the ground, like the Pirates are trying to do, and maybe you can accelerate that. Other teams are have other motivations, even if you're a bigger market team. I guess it's kind of touches on what Shaun was saying is the first thing everyone's going to ask that's in those rooms are what's it do to the money, right? What's how
Yeah, right.
follow the money? Does it cost the players and the agents money? Man, I don't know that I have a good enough picture about all that to even know if they would be supportive of it from the get-go. I think from a fan standpoint, I'd love it. I mean, I'd watch the Major League draft, if these were things that could happen. So, but I don't know when you get inside the nuts and bolts and get down to all the attorney stuff and the agent stuff, is it something they would even go for?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the agents probably wouldn't care because you'd still be going in a slot. It's not like it would matter if the Pirates picked the first and fourth pick of the draft. I mean, as long as the slot money traveled, like we said.
Right.
If it doesn't, then yeah, I think agents would get upset because clearly one of those first two picks isn't going to get actually signed. So I don't know. It's an idea that I've had for a while. I've always liked it in the NHL, although being a Penguins fan, I think it's largely gotten them into trouble. But
that's up to the teams, right? Like if you can't handle it, that's on you. And I don't mind that part of it.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen teams mismanage things like that before. They take wild swings and misses on top picks. But, even the Pirates this year, let's say they had the first 2 or 3 picks, right? Everyone was super afraid to take Jack Leiter because he's a pitcher, right? And they take the safe pick, I think, with Davis. If you had the 1 and the 2, well, one of them's probably going to be Jack Leiter, right? Because you don't feel like you're swinging your entire year's, um, pull in your first pick, you get an opportunity almost for a do-over. You up your chances of actually getting a player, and for a team that is rebuilding through the draft and has to survive that way, I mean, like, I can see the appeal there. The other side of it, though, Shaun, is I'm not sure teams like the Pirates need more incentive to trade established players. And that's realistically what they'd be moving for those draft picks. Let's not pretend you could gang together 5 or 6 lower round picks for it. They're very valuable to every team in the game.
I mean, that's essentially what they're getting anyway. They're getting prospects instead of major league ready talent. So they're already taking a bit of a flyer on them. And
Yeah.
that's what
Instead of a lottery pick, you're supposedly making an educated guess, right?
right, you have more information. But I think you have to look at what the big market teams are going to want. Like, they've built a lot of it through just free agency and taking what other teams have developed and taking that uncertainty out of it. I think that the major leagues, it's the most uncertain of all the drafts out of the 4 major sports. So
Easily,
I
yeah.
wouldn't say I'd say that the Yankees, the Dodgers, if they can go ahead and flip a number 1 pick for a starting pitcher, just like you said, a number 3 rotation guy, they'd probably do it just because you know what you're getting versus that first round draft pick.
I
It's
think
just
it
what
would.
the money is going to do.
I think it would worry me a little bit in the sense of, there's all these things that while we talk about it, you don't realize kind of like, the ripple effect. And what I would hate to see though is teams with this new way to kind of bow out or throw in the towel every year or every 4 or 5 years, that you're actually encouraging that too. We've already got enough of that going
It's
on
a good point.
going on in baseball. And so does that start to happen? Because now you've given a team a chance to unload contracts and acquire picks and just start it all over again pretty quickly if you wanted to. So I wouldn't say that happened a ton, but I think that those scenarios might occur. And I don't know if that's something baseball wants to get into right now either.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta be honest. To me, this was a slam dunk subject when I first introduced it. I was 100% for it. And just talking this through a little bit, and we've started talking a few layers under the onion, it's starting to stink a little bit. So I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% for it now.
Well, how about
That
this? Like, we're looking at it from a big market perspective. At least I was. What about from the Pirates' perspective or another team's perspective? Like, you get to maybe keep some more of the picks that you had already drafted. A lot of your prospects. You get to maybe package in some draft picks, but you also get to keep a guy who's already in your system, and that also helps with the MILB quality of life. So if you're trying to attract more people there, it's like, hey, you might get drafted and you're gonna have to work yourself through a farm system, but chances are it'll be one farm system instead of multiple farm systems.
Yeah, I mean, that's plausible, but I mean, another thing that the Pirates really kind of can't afford to give up, though, Jim, is grabbing guys from other teams that they've already done a lot of the hard work, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do want some of those guys like Jack Sawinski, who comes in here in Double A and kind of looks like he's ready to be in Double A. It's nice to have that every once in a while, right?
Yeah, I think you first of all got to perfect making meals in your own kitchen, right? I mean, that's where
Yeah.
you're going to do the majority of your eating, and it's not a bad point that Shaun brings up, but I don't know how much. I mean, we've clearly seen how much baseball cares about their minor league players anyway. They've been just absolutely embarrassed into having to do something about the living conditions and the, paying a livable wage. So that's probably way down on the totem pole for the bottom feeders. So yeah, like Gary was saying, when we started this, and we've talked about it somewhat in the past.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, man, hey, that's great. I'll tune in. Yeah, I'll have my bowl of popcorn and I'll be waiting for the draft. And, man, we can see who the Pirates are going to do, what they're going to do with this draft pick and this guy. But the more you start drilling down on it, there's a lot of things that would have to be ironed out. And then we also haven't even gotten into the whole fact of, they're going to start changing service time. And now you're dealing with more draft picks and things of that nature. So, I mean, it just seems like the more you dig into it, the more confusing it gets.
That's how baseball is in general. All these rules are interconnected and married, and so every time you talk about changing one thing, it kind of
Yeah.
So I guess we have a little bit more time. Let's bring up another rule change that they've been talking about, and that is the designated hitter. Okay, universal designated hitter. I thought this was just about 100% in the bag. And then recently I've started hearing some comments that, yeah, I don't know, it's the only league in the entire country that still has no designated hitter. Maybe we don't necessarily want to give that up as a game yet. And I've heard that from Manfred a couple times too. So, I mean, I don't necessarily want to make this, is it a good thing or a bad thing if there's a designated hitter? Just more, do you think it's going to happen? I've really kind of believed it was going to happen for about a year now. So it's odd for me to be starting to waver at this point.
I still think it's going to happen. Just with, there seems to be more and more guys that are coming up in Major League Baseball that don't have true positions or are quite honestly just butchers out there. I mean, we've seen, how many times have we seen Yoshi out there, and it's very apt for Halloween. It's frightening. But so yeah, like just from that standpoint alone, I think you're getting a lot of guys up. They're big guys. They don't necessarily play a true position. And it's just more versatility for teams. So I still think it'll happen, but I mean, it's baseball, so you never know.
Shaun, what do you think, sir?
I hope it doesn't happen, but it's an eventuality. It's whether it happens this year or the next CBA, it's coming. Um, so I just hope they push it off to the next one.
Shaun, I can
I like.
sense your excitement for the DH. It's just jumping off screen right now. Is there
uh,
like, I know you don't, well, let's not get into a big thing about it, but I'd be really curious. What is it that immediately I can tell you're not for it at all?
For me, it's just the rhythm of the game. Like you get to the top of the order in the American League, it's just kind of like just a little bit better than the bottom of the order that you just saw. You get to the top of the order in the American League, it's so exciting for me. Uh, uh, it's like what you're trying to get to. You're trying to get to those guys. And whenever you see a pitcher get a hit, for me, that's really exciting. He helps out his own cause, and it just to rehash all the old arguments, like you have more strategy in the National League and all that other stuff. You have the same guys coming up just trying to bash the ball in the American League, and it gets a little not tedious, but it just doesn't have the same rhythm, and that's what I grew up with. I grew up in the National League, and that's just what I like.
I did too, and I think I don't want to say that I gave up on this subject because I used to be very kind of anti the DH, and recently I think I've been thinking of it more from a perspective of it makes it a little easier to get that next step from AAA to the majors done for some guys that maybe aren't ready to take a position over, but you like their bat an awful lot and you'd really like to get them up here and see what they can do. I just think it provides a little bit more flexibility there. Um, The hitters, the pitchers hitting, I agree with you, Shaun. It's kind of cool when they hit well. It's nice when you have a little break from facing one of those murderers road lineups where you get that pitcher that lets you get through the hump. But I don't know. I haven't seen enough pitchers really taking at bats seriously recently for me to feel like it's something I want to keep watching.
That's that's really kind of what happened with me. I think you've just seen, because I used to be against it, and then you've just seen such non-competitive at bats a lot of times from pitchers. And look, those have always been there, but I think it's been more and more of that. And I don't know if they've almost just conceded that most of the guys, that go up there as pitchers aren't going to be able to hit. I will say, like, the thing that I keep coming back to with this is, if baseball is looking to find more ways to get the interest level and the excitement up and the balls in play and things of that nature, then I think it's just a matter of time. It's a quick way to try
Right.
to inject that into the game when all these other problems are so, like we've talked about, interconnected, that this would be a way right away, at least in one league, to kind of get that moving a little bit.
I mean, if they're not going to do it, I mean, this isn't just a Pirates problem. But if they're not going to do it, somebody needs to very seriously think about making the pitchers take batting practice for real and at least teaching them how to bunt. I mean, you should at least be able to drop down a bunt. I don't care that, like, Brian Reynolds isn't a good bunter. For all I know, he probably is. Yeah, I'd imagine he could do whatever he wants. But, I don't care if Colin Moran can bunt. I want to see Chad Cole drop down a perfect bunt down the first baseline. That's what he should be able to do.
You don't want to see Colin Moran drag bunt and just leg one out and beat it down the line. I mean,
I want to see it 2 years from now when he's been traded to the Cubs. I don't want to see it right now, but that's just me. I mean, I think I've seen enough of Colin Moran trying to run.
Don't you think? Don't you think too, though, that it's gotten hard for hitters to hit. So you're asking pitchers to go up there, and the velocity and the movement that you are seeing now from guys is so off the charts that, even bunting is more difficult than it used to be. So I can see why pitchers often look so bad doing it now.
See, but that's one of those unwritten rules that kind of went away quietly, though. Remember, it used to be like you didn't throw breaking pitches to a pitcher; you just threw them fastballs, right?
Yeah.
And even when they'd sit up there like ready to bunt before the pitcher's even like taking his spot on the mound, they're standing there squared up.
Yeah.
Well, you used to throw it right into their bat. Yeah, here, have at it. Now you get like a down and away curveball you're supposed to try to bunt and whatnot. They're not giving it up the way they used to. It used to be just a free shot at it. So, yeah, I mean, if that aspect of the game has changed and it seems obviously to have, then yeah, I mean, what are we holding on to it for anymore? Let it go. And if Steven Brault really wants to hit, he can play right field.
Yeah, and he can pull a Rick Ankiel. But
dude, he would have been a better option at the plate than an awful lot of guys we had this year.
Well, that's true. I'd prefer never to revisit that again. But no,
don't watch next year then.
Oh, Gary, stop. I'm trying to stay positive over the off season here. It's very hard.
Right, we have to get through Christmas before I start that. Sorry about that. Anyways, no, guys, great talk again. I really had a wonderful time talking about everything today. The rule changes and the pitcher was changing, and what the GM's actually doing. I think, man, it was good stuff today. And hey, I got to give a quick plug out too. If you haven't had a chance yet to read Alex Stump's latest piece on DK Pittsburgh Sports, just bar none, the absolute best job anybody has done this entire year covering the development team and everything that's going on with the system as far as the different things they're trying. I learned things about the structure of the pitching techniques that they have through the system that I ever knew. And I covered this team pretty closely myself. So wonderful piece. Please take the time to read it. It's not a free one. It's worth the 7-day free trial if you can just get a hold of that even. If you're a Pirates fan, really, really got to give that one a read. It's very, very good stuff. And Jim, before we go, how do people get a hold of you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm all Twitter all the time. It's _412 or at Jim Stamm 22. Love to talk to Pirates and basically anything Pittsburgh, you will get my attention. I do want to ask Shaun, how often do you see anybody out there, because you're in Texas, right?
Yep.
How often do you see anybody rocking a Pirates hat or a Pirates shirt, and do you get hit immediately with stalking charges when you see that?
So it happens more than you think.
Really?
So there is a lot of people with some pirate hats, but you got to be careful too because a lot of them just like the hat. They're not a fan of Pittsburgh. So you sit there and you be like, "Hey, Pirates," and they're like, "No, I'm not talking to you." So,
hey, at least they don't think it's a Philly hat, man.
Oh, fair enough.
But
I got a buddy.
Shaun, people.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to tell people how to get a hold of you on Twitter. You are Shaun P. Conley, and that is Shaun spelled the King's English way, SHAUN P. Conley on Twitter. He is a good follow, and he loves to talk Bucs, so give him a shout out too. Follow the show on Pirates Fan Forum at Twitter, and you can also email the show, piratesfanforum@yahoo.com. We love to answer questions. If you send them in to us, we'll happily try to answer them. Or if you have a role suggestion for the CBA that you think is coming up and you'd like us to cover it in one of our segments, we'll definitely take care of that as well. Anything else to add today, Mr. Stamm?
No, I was just going to follow up with you, Shaun. Shaun knows his stuff, and he's a good follow. So if he won't plug himself, we'll do it.
Oh, well, I was trying to, but Garrett beat me to it.
Well, have at it, sir.
No. So, I appreciate it. Shaun P. Conley at Twitter. And I do apologize ahead of time. I'm Austin this week. I'm here for the F1 race, and it will be a Formula One Stan account for the next 3 days. So,
you've been warned.
Right. So start following him like next Monday.
Monday. There you go.
Everybody, yeah. It's going to be all right. And hey, without further ado, let's go Bucs. And also Kenny Pickett for Heisman.
Let's go Bucs!